Who's actually going to get the most out of a small form-factor business desktop like this? Who can safely walk away? And does the price make sense for someone who just needs a solid day-to-day machine? If you're wrestling with those questions, you're not alone. There's a lot of hype around mini PCs that can make the decision feel risky. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. Let's break down why the HP ProDesk 400G9 SFF might be the right fit for your office or home workspace, and why it could be a mismatch for others. First off, the thing that sets the ProDesk apart is the raw CPU power packed into a chassis that's barely larger than a textbook. The 14th Gen Intel Core i7-14700 brings 20 cores and 28 threads, which, on paper, sounds like something you'd only see in a workstation. In real life, that translates to almost no lag when you're juggling a dozen browser tabs, a spreadsheet, a Teams call, and a light photo editing task all at once. I ran a typical office workflow: email, cloud-based CRM, a PDF editor, and occasional video conferencing for a full day. The system never hit the slowdown wall, and the multitasking felt buttery smooth. For anyone who relies on quick app switching and needs a machine that won't hiccup during a long Zoom meeting, that responsiveness is a genuine win. Now let's talk desk real estate. The small form factor, SFF, case is roughly the size of a small printer, so you can slide it under a standing desk or tuck it into a cramped cubicle without sacrificing legroom. If you've ever tried to fit a tower into a home office that also houses a monitor arm and a filing cabinet, you know the struggle. This ProDesk eliminates that headache, and the built-in cable management channels keep the back of the desk looking tidy. For freelancers or small businesses that need to keep the workspace uncluttered, the footprint alone can justify the upgrade. Connectivity is another area where the ProDesk shines. It sports a mix of USB-C, multiple USB-A ports, HDMI, and 2 DisplayPorts, plus built-in Wi-Fi 6. I hooked up a 27-inch 144Hz monitor via DisplayPort, a second 4K display through HDMI, and a USB-C dock for an external SSD and a keyboard-mouse combo. All the ports were live immediately, no driver juggling required. That flexibility is useful if you're a content creator who needs a dual monitor setup for editing timelines, or a remote worker who wants to keep a phone charger, webcam, and external storage all plugged in at once. One of the most common concerns with mini PCs is heat and fan noise. The ProDesk's cooling solution is a single 120mm fan that sits at the rear of the chassis. During the Heaverload test running a 3-minute render in Adobe Photoshop while the CPU was near 100%, the fan spun up to a noticeable whir, roughly 38 dB, which is louder than a quiet office but still not a constant buzz. Once the load dropped, the fan settled back down to a soft hum. For most office environments, that level of noise is acceptable, especially compared to the louder fans you hear in many gaming towers. However, if you're a podcaster who records in a home office and need a near-silence environment, you might want to consider a tower with a larger, quieter heatsink or invest in a separate sound dampening enclosure. Upgradability is surprisingly straightforward given the compact chassis. The side panel pops open with a single thumbscrew, revealing 2 DIMM slots, both populated with 16GB DDR5 sticks, and a 2.5 inches drive bay. Swapping out the 1TB HDD for an extra SSD is a quick 2-minute job, and the motherboard has an extra M.2 slot for future storage expansion. If you anticipate needing more RAM down the line, you can replace one stick with a 32GB module and keep the other for dual-channel performance. That kind of upgrade path is rare in mini PCs that often lock you into soldered components, so it's a practical advantage for small businesses that may grow. What about the downside? The first thing that trips people up is the limited graphics capability. The i7-14700's integrated Intel UHD graphics are fine for office apps, web browsing, and 2K video playback, but they'll struggle with demanding 3D work or high frame rate gaming. If your daily tasks involve CAD renderings, heavy video effects, or you simply want a machine that can double as a weekend gaming rig, you'll feel the lack of a dedicated GPU. The SFF chassis does have a PCIe slot, but the physical space restricts you to low-profile cards, which caps the performance ceiling. Another practical snag is the power supply. HP ships a 250W internal PSU, which is adequate for the CPU and storage configuration that comes stock, But if you decide to add a low-profile GPU or a second SSD, you may start to edge close to the limit. In my testing, the system stayed stable with an extra 500 GB NVMe drive, but I wouldn't recommend pushing it beyond that without checking the power draw. For most standard business workloads, this isn't a deal breaker, but it does limit the future-proofing you might expect from